When I spoke to your dad and to you, you guys get this glitter in your eye when you talk about what you do, the whole aspect of building. And I take it back to somebody, imagine this, you're in your car, son is beside you, and you're driving by this big high rise and hey, Sonny Jim, your dad used to work there on the 15th floor. Well, you can't see the cubicle that I was in, but it's
Yeah.
there right? Versus you're going down a neighborhood and you see other children playing, somebody's out cutting the grass, people are walking down the street, and you look over to your son and say, we built that.
Yeah.
That's got to warm your heart that the impact that you have, not only on your family, but other families and families of families. You touch so many people. You don't strike me as the kind of guy that would ever take that for granted. But man, what a gift that must be, knowing that you've had such a positive influence on so many people.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Krisa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
So Patrick, I guess one of the questions I've got right off the bat is, I interviewed your dad way back. He was actually my first guest on Builder Straight Talk. Wonderful guy, like absolutely salt of the earth, wonderful guy. So I'm guessing, was it already in the stars, you growing up as a kid, that, okay, I'm not going to do ballet, knitting's out, the path is clear, I'm going to be a builder? Like, was that always in the stars for you, or was there a different pathway that maybe you didn't venture down?
Honestly, it wasn't in the plans at all. So I went to college on a baseball scholarship and played baseball professionally in the minor leagues for a few years, and that was my dream. But I'd always grew up on the job sites, working in the summers or my off season. And when I met my wife, baseball became secondary, and starting a family became important. When I was working for my dad, we went into remodels. It was during the recession, and I learned everything very quickly through those remodels, and it was a lot of fun. So I decided to make it a full-time job occupation for me, and I've loved it ever since.
So it's actually a passion, you fell in love with it, as opposed to it's something I got to get out of bed in the morning and do?
Initially I was a laborer, and I had some hesitation getting up in the morning and, adjusting to that schedule. But as I became more of a superintendent and estimator and overall project coordinator, I love doing that. Making people's houses function better, making them more cost effective, higher quality, just bringing that imagination into the project was what I grew up to love.
So is it fair to say that your dad was sort of grooming you with the expectation that one day he's going to be with his wife, your mother, sitting on a beach drinking big fruity drinks while you're running the company?
You know, I don't ever think that that was his dream. Not until he got older and realized that, we could be successful in this as well. And our initial dreams became a thing of the past, that he realized that he really enjoyed having us as part of the company. At one point in time, my brother also worked for the company. He builds bridges now in North Carolina. But as we worked with him more, he began to love the idea of having us around and part of the company. And I think he valued us more than most, not in a, how would I say, not in a biased way, but that we actually brought value to the company and what we've learned in college and growing up around construction. So
That's interesting. So it was never at the beginning, like I think the typical father thinks, I'm building a business, I'm building a legacy. And the dream is that his children, his sons, are going to one day step in and then take over. You're making it sound more like you were an employee, even though you loved what you were doing. Don't get me wrong here, but it didn't seem like in your mind that you had that vision that one day you're going to be steering the ship, or at least it wasn't something in the forefront right away.
that's correct. Yeah, he always wanted us to go do something else. His dream for us was to become better than he was, and that's, not an easy task, but he wanted better for us. He didn't want us to he felt that what he was doing initially was, very admirable. He started a company without a college education, actually got his GED and was a successful company. But I think initially he thought that the road we were on could provide better than what he had. And now, with the success that he's gained, it's hard to believe that there's many options out there that are better than what we're doing now.
Well, not to blow the big brass horn, but you guys are what, like within the top 2% in terms of volume of builders in Arizona?
I would say it's pretty close. I don't know what the exact statistics would be, but I would say that especially in our area, the volume of work we do and the quality of work, I think that's first and foremost is the quality of the jobs trumps the volume. We're not really after production or tract home building, but we have grown quite a bit. So I would imagine we're up there in terms of the volume that we do.
So let's focus on that. In terms of the type of build, is it all custom or are you doing a combination of custom and spec? Or are you building for rent? Like what is it? What's the magic formula for the Lawler Group?
So it's a little bit of a mixture. I wouldn't say we're ever production. Every subdivision home we build is still semi-custom. We're adjusting, the footprint, adding bathrooms, customizing the overall look and elevation of the home. And that's really the starting point for us. But I've always, part of my sales pitch is that nothing is too small and nothing's too big. As long as it's new construction, I feel like we're the right pick for anybody who's looking for quality and not just the bottom dollar.
So are you guys doing from beginning to end? Like, do you acquire the land, develop the land, do the build, or is that kind of as it comes along? If the opportunity presents itself, you go down that path. I guess what I'm looking for, you guys are flexible enough that you do it all.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. A lot of our clients will come to us before they've selected a lot, and we'll help them with that lot selection, especially in our location in, central Arizona, where you could have very rocky soil, or you could have expansive soil, or you could have no utilities nearby. There's a lot that comes into that lot selection that helps us meet our client's budget and then design a home into their needs and budget and make that happen. But there's a lot of clients that come to us with plans, or they had a failed relationship with their past builder and they're ready to pull a permit, or already have, and they're ready to break ground, and we'll step in at that point. As long as, ground hasn't been broken, we can jump in and be the contractor.
That's got to be, that's almost like being a marriage counselor. Like, how do you dance around a client that's obviously they're upset because they're coming to you and the relationship and the expectations they have with this other builder? I guess part of it too, they have a grand dream of what they want. The dream's been shattered and now they come to you. How do you bridge that? And for like, I don't know what the builder term would be for warm and fuzzy, but how do you give them the warm and fuzzies so they understand that you are the guys that are going to deliver them to the promised land?
Well, that's a great question, because I think the large majority of clients that come into any situation where they want somebody to build their home, they've heard horror stories of what contractors do and how they act, and what you should really plan for your budget to be. And we're the exact opposite, in my opinion. We aren't begging for people to come into the doors, so we want them to know exactly what to expect to the best of our abilities. So I'm showing them previous contracts we've written. I've shown them previous final invoices that we've sent to our clients, just to show that we truly are itemizing every cost and only charging them what we've spent plus our margin. We have a few different, mottos we kind of live by, and one of them is 100% transparency to the nth degree, and another is under promise and over deliver. So we want our contract and our timeline to be beat on every job. So
Is there a process that you have that when you're meeting with clients for the first time, I guess setting the expectations, and then from there, does it move up incrementally to the point where they're actually getting ready to sign?
yeah, I do feel, though, in the very beginning, to get a good gauge of the type of client that we may be working with, we're trying to tell them worst case scenario almost from the start, especially when we just experienced the pandemic and the issues that came along with the pandemic. Lead times can change, price increases can occur, or our subcontractors' volume can increase, and now they only can do one of our jobs a week instead of two. So we want to make sure that every client we work with is somewhat understanding, if not completely understanding, of what could occur, especially in a small community like ours. Word of mouth and referrals are very important to us. So we want to make sure they're happy in the end and not in the beginning. So,
It's crazy, that formula, Patrick, that if you do something good, they'll tell one or two people. If you screw up, they're telling the world, you know?
right,
In real estate, I've been a broker since 1983. So I've been in this. Every time I try to leave real estate, it keeps pulling me back one way or the other. And here I am behind a microphone interviewing guys like you,
right.
successful builders. But one of the things that I always used was a checklist, and I called the 88 turbulences. And
Mhm.
this is a list of like everything I could imagine that could possibly go wrong. And I deliver that when they're under contract, because that's when they think, well, Michael's sitting back in a room somewhere counting his imaginary money and
Yeah,
smoking a cigar. When in reality, I tell them these are the things that could go wrong behind the scenes that I'm going to take care of. And hopefully you'll never know.
right.
But if they do, here's the list. So when you give me that panic call at, 10 o'clock in the evening, I'll say, look at number 73. It's okay. This is
That's a great
normal. We're going to
idea.
address it.
I might steal that idea and come up with something similar. We try to prepare them for the possibilities, but in construction, there's surprises often. I mean, we limit them, but we don't shelter our client from them. We want them to know, because 9 times out of 10, it's out of our hands. We're waiting on an engineer, or prices went up with the manufacturer. So it's fortunate that the bad news isn't as often as it was during the pandemic, but it really was a crash course on how to deal with those conversations and help clients prepare for that so that they're happiest when we hand those keys over.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you guys are still swinging hammers is a testament to how you sailed through that, because I know a lot of contractors that didn't make it through the other side, so it's kind of sad in that respect. Getting back to, I guess, how you control your costs, change orders, when we talk about things that can go wrong, how do you address those? Is that something you set the expectation again at the beginning? And
Absolutely.
okay,
Yeah.
so let's
So
go down that path.
I'll share some examples with clients in the beginning, but something that, again, we adjusted as part of our procedures during the pandemic is setting a contingency allowance that we felt covers that worst case scenario. So, based on the worst case scenario of price increases between now and the time of ordering the actual materials, or whether it's hard rock digging, needing to bring import soil to the job site, or exporting large rocks. We have our team of subcontractors look at the job and kind of calculate a risk to their proposal, based on the products or based on the location. We try to give them a contract in the beginning that includes an allowance for the change orders that are to be somewhat expected. And so in the last 4 years, I don't think we've exceeded our contract one time unless a client decides to upgrade something. So,
So you put that aside as a buffer, as you
yeah,
will, and if you don't have to tap into that, or you don't use the whole thing, does that factor in as profit for you, or does that go back to the client?
no, it goes back to the client.
Wow.
So we just now kind of gotten to the point where at the end of the job, we literally send our expense report for their job to the penny and at our margin. And then whatever the final job is supposed to be is less whatever savings we were able to save them.
Do you find that's something that makes you guys unique? Because I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, I do. I do. I think it's more unique than most people realize. I mean, I hear of cost plus contracts, but I also hear all my suppliers say, "Are you sure you want us to share our quote with them? Are you sure you want us to tell them your cost?" Like, they're used to marking it up for their general contractor. and then we mark it up, and they don't have a team that can track everything to the penny and to the hour, to the half hour, to the quarter hour. So it's not perfect because it still comes down to guys tracking their hours properly and being honest with the amount of time they are on the job. But our team does a great job of that. We're blessed to have such a good group of people in the office and out in the field that, take ownership of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Interesting you say you're blessed. I recall when I was interviewing your dad, Jim, one of the things that he said that there was a moment in time where his back was against the wall and he thought, this is it. Like, I'm done. We're throwing in the towel. So, Cindy and him were just in the corner praying. And he said, Michael, I just looked at God and I said, whatever happens now is in your hands. From this day forward, we're building with God in mind. And I thought, holy jumping, like, the fact that he would even bring God up in a conversation, because I think that's outlawed in like 49 of the 52 states. Correct me if I'm wrong here. And that he has such a devout faith. And he said
Yeah,
from that moment on, it was like a burden was lifted off his shoulders. Would you
absolutely.
consider yourself a spiritual man as well, like following in your father's footsteps?
Absolutely. That is, you know, so many things can go wrong. And if your identity is in this industry or what you do in this industry, you're gonna die of stress. It's just too much going on, too many things going on around you that are unpredictable. And so that's a huge part of our company. I mean, we start every meeting with a prayer. We truthfully believe that it's in God's control, it's in God's hands, and that does take that level of stress off because we may lose a client. We may put in a lot of work and they decide to go another direction, but we feel that God probably saved us from a client that was going to be a headache. So I feel like we're the right contractor for everybody if we put in the time and get to that point, but maybe not every client is the perfect client for us.
Let me tap on that for a second, Patrick. So I think of this, I can't remember the country singer girl, and it's, Jesus take the wheel,
Yeah.
like doodly doo, driving down the highway, lose control, the car's spinning. So I'll just let go of and Jesus is going to step in. And I just want to swap my set in the head. Believing in God, having a faith in what you do and combining that with work does not mean that you abandon everything and hope that God's going to step in and do it for you.
Right.
I think that's more of what's a better way to say it? It's more like a buffer on the highway. So if you do skid out of control, it kind of nudges you back into the lane.
That's right. It's very common throughout the Bible you're told to, we got to do our work. We got to do what God has blessed us with gifts to do the things we're doing. And it's our job to do them. Obviously, we have a role in what we're assigned to do and what the expectations are, both of the company and the client, but also, of God. Obviously, that's the way I look at it. But, you know, fortunately, we're forgiven for our mistakes, so we don't have to dwell on those things. It's my dad always says, you're going to wake up and it's going to be here tomorrow. Everything's going to be here tomorrow. Your work's going to be here tomorrow. So valuing and prioritizing the different things in your life are another big thing. I mean, family's so important, and understanding that of our team, that we can't expect more out of them than we do of ourselves. So it's just a lot of good values and morals that come from having a Christ-based business, and having that be your business plan is a recipe for success, in my opinion.
Does that ever create a conflict in so much that when you're partnering with people or you're hiring people that they have to have that same value and vision and commitment that you do?
Yes and no. It's always a little bit in the back of your mind, especially when you're talking about employees. Obviously, we can't fire somebody or hire somebody based on that, but we just want to make it clear, so if they're uncomfortable or if they don't want to put themselves in that situation, you know so be it. I mean, that's up to them, but we do make that clear in the beginning so that We don't get to the first office meeting and they're like, what is going on? And with it being a small community, most of the people around us know where we stand with that, and so it's not really a surprise in most cases. And it can be to clients, but I think even if somebody doesn't believe or have the same beliefs we do, they respect it. And to a degree, I think they feel a little comfortable that we're going to operate on the up and up and be trustworthy. That's really important to us. So,
I think that's part of being in that small community that you said you have to walk your talk.
yeah,
So if you put it forward that this is how we represent ourselves, this is how we run our company, then you've got to be consistent with that. Otherwise, you're just charlatans, right? So
yeah,
let's go back a step. Have you ever been in a position where you have to turn people down, not because of faith? Let's just put that one aside.
sure.
But they come to you and their expectations are just way off the charts. You don't think you can work with them, not so much budget, but just maybe expectations and what they want from you. Has that ever arisen?
That happens more often than you think. I mean, I guess I don't know. I only have my experience to pull from on this, but I am the front line when it comes to determining if a client or if we are a good fit for them or vice versa. And I would say, 40% of the time, the initial conversation is an eye opener for us or them. They're a little out of touch with what usually budget, usually what you're able to get for your money. And the unfortunate thing is that there is a vast difference in cost right now in different parts of the country. It can be hard for some people to figure out why it's more expensive here. And there's quite a few reasons. I don't know them all. I don't know why you can get a house in Texas that would cost 2 million here for 550,000. I don't know that. But I do know some of the reasons why our cost is higher. And most of that has to do with the amount of labor, the cost of living and where it's at and what we have to pay people. But also we live in kind of a land island where everything has to be shipped more to get to us. So those are just a few of the things. But yeah, we've gotten plenty of, situations where we've had to say to a client, like, I just don't think this is going to go in the direction where it's going to be affordable for you or realistic. And I have to be really careful about that because I think with our team, we could probably do 30 to 40 estimates a year max. I mean, and that's probably a little more than we could do. But so if we take on one or two of them and they can't afford it and we don't find out till we're 5 months into the process, that's a pretty big waste of time for us and opportunity for us, so it's not a fun job all the time.
Yeah. I use that line with my clients. I'd rather turn you down than let you down,
Yeah.
that's, I don't want to say save my baking, but it has in a lot of instances because again, getting back to that stress relief, it's like, yeah, okay. It's not that I didn't want to work with them, but the expectations weren't there. And I knew that it would just be friction. And I'm sure you're probably the same. If I can't get up in the morning and look forward to what I'm going to be doing, as opposed to dreading every hour of that day because I'm
Yeah.
going to be working with those people, I might as well be under a bridge somewhere drinking, bourbon or something with, yeah. Anyway,
All
I
right.
digress. Yeah. Let's get back into you and the position now within the company. Is there a formal title or formal hat that you're wearing right now?
I'm vice president of the company. So
And
that's a
obviously
formal
something that you earned?
I would say so, yes.
Okay.
I've worked my way through being a laborer to start. Then it was full project coordinator handling estimating and then supervising scheduling of remodels during the 2008 2009 recession. And at that point we realized estimating was a good fit for me, and so I did that for another I still do that to some degree, but after 6 or 7 years, We've got a few other estimators. I just started overseeing them and helping them get to where we needed them to be more quickly. And at that point, it just kind of fell into a vice president role due to the size that we became. We had 5 superintendents and 4 estimators at one point, and I just was overseeing mainly the whole operations.
How big is the operation now? Like, how many people are there all told?
We have 4 superintendents, 4 estimators, we call them project coordinators now, an interior designer, an in-house architect, an office manager, 3 assistants right now for her, and a few laborers and a warranty manager. So I think in all, we're about 17 to 20 usually.
Wow. And you're no longer swinging a hammer. You're more of a supervisory role now.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Do you miss it at all?
I do. There's parts of it that I miss. I miss being on the job site sometimes. I try to get out there more, but it's difficult. There's a lot to do in the office. So, and I'm a baseball coach and have 3 kids, so I gotta prioritize my schedule and make sure I'm making time for that as well. So,
You were just at a tournament trying to line up this interview was a bit of a challenge because you were like on the road. What was that? Oh man, actor Forrest Gump. Who played Forrest Gump?
oh, Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks when he was
Yeah.
the women's baseball coach.
Oh,
Remember that
right.
one?
A League of Their
Yeah, and
Own.
I just had a
Yeah.
flashback to you like on the bus, going to all these different towns, rolling out the team. But this is
Yeah.
Little League that
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah. Well,
Cool.
and they're growing fast though. My daughter is going to be a senior in high school next year and plays softball and flag football. And then my oldest son just made a state team that's going to go play in a national tournament in Indianapolis in about 3 weeks. So we have to practice in Phoenix every week for that. And my youngest is in a break, but he's getting ready to start practicing again next week. So it's a full-time job in its own, it seems, but it's what we love. We love, our kids being able to play year round and do what they love to do.
And how old are they?
So my oldest is 17, and that's my daughter, my only daughter. And then the boys are 13 and 10. They're both about to have birthdays pretty soon. The youngest will be 11 in 3 weeks. He tells me basically every day. So,
Do you see a sparkle or an inkling in any of them that they want to follow in daddy's footsteps?
it's almost the exact same situation that my dad was in. We're pushing them to do what they are dreaming to do, but I do see it in the background every now and then that they like that I get to do what I do, and they're proud of us and who we've become as a company. And so, especially when we're doing things like this, they think it's pretty cool. So, there's a very good chance that 1 or 2 of them is going to end up working with us someday. And I'm definitely going to make them, have a summer job if they're not playing sports. So,
I think you've got to give them, I look at it as an opportunity. And I mean, you know this better than I do. For every 5 in the trades that are retiring right now, only 1.2, I think, is the average. I don't even know what that means. What somebody in a wheelchair is coming to work at a job site, but where they come up with this. But we're going to get to this point where it's a tsunami that will have not enough labor. There's an abundant demand. I
yeah,
think at 10 million homes a year in the US, you're 20 years behind in catching up.
yeah,
And so you're going to have a limited labor force that can demand more than premium wages. And now they can be very selective about the projects that they actually take on.
yeah,
And I think we have to encourage more people to get into the trades. And I think that starts right at grade school. I remember in kindergarten, we had the big work blocks that we got to play with, and
yeah,
we're building like log homes in a can. And I don't see that happening now. Everything seems to be with an iPad or digital. And I
yeah,
think we have a generation of kids that have lost the ability to use their hands. And with the
right.
hands come the imagination that I can actually build something. Or am I off the
No,
mark here?
I think you're right on. I mean, I'm fortunate. My kids love being outside. They love, not necessarily, grunt work, but they just love to be outside. They love to be using their hands. But generally speaking, I think what you just said is exactly right, and we're gonna be in trouble. I tell people all the time, the direction we're headed with the cost of minimum wage and what we're gonna be asking people to do for $20 an hour compared to working at Taco Bell is it's something that they just don't see as being attractive, you know?
There's such a disconnect, and I think back to when I was a kid, across the street was the technical school, and, we
Yeah.
jokingly said, "Ha ha, that's where you go when you're dumb and you can't do anything." But that's where they went to learn a trade,
Yeah,
right? And I'm thinking, okay, so those guys that we were laughing at as kids, they're the ones that are driving around in Ferraris that are coming to charge $250 an hour to
right.
fix my leaky toilet, right?
Yeah,
So I think part of the disconnect is parents have to get behind their children and realize that it's a noble profession. Like being able
yeah,
to master a trade means that you are reliant on no one because in a couple of years after you've apprenticed and you're out there, you've taken your lumps, you can actually start up your own business.
right. And I've read a few things lately where it seems the excitement for it is coming back in cases. I don't know. Because you're absolutely right. I mean, there's an opportunity for kids out there. And if you look at it overall, it seems that the opportunity is greater than those that are getting a college degree because those jobs, when you get that degree, are now going to be taken over by AI or just less need for people in the office. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what's going to happen, but I will say the cost of living and the cost of houses have gone up to a point where I'm not even sure how my kids are gonna afford to have a house, when the time comes. So, there's a lot of adjustment I think we need to do as a whole and figure out how we're gonna make this happen for everybody, both to have the labor and to have the affordability. So,
Do you see technology, Patrick, playing a role in this, like building homes more efficiently, the use of AI, digital printed homes, that kind of, is that kind of the savior, if you will, on the horizon that will hopefully bring down costs, expedite the process, be
it's
able to build homes
possible.
without labor?
I mean, it's hard to see how AI is gonna perform in the field, like, actually when it comes down to building the home, but I have seen the 3D printed homes. I know there's a community, I think it's in Arizona potentially, that is starting to build them. However, it's hard to know what the possibilities are with that. How far can you take it? How much does it complete? Is it just the exterior walls or, where will it end? So it's gonna be interesting to see. Obviously, everybody is trying to advance their technology, at least companies who are newer. I know some of these guys that are on the way out are just like, they don't wanna touch anything. We use a lot of technology in our industry already, and we get pushback from guys that are like, sending handwritten invoices to us. So, but most of those guys are retiring, it seems, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Yeah, I've interviewed a couple guys that are doing the 3D printed homes. The first time I heard of it, I just envisioned little Lego bricks, and,
Yeah,
and I just laughed. I said, "Oh, okay, oh, you a 3D printed home, yeah, you've got a little printer." And
yeah,
it was basically, "Look, Gilligan, no, we've got this big extrusion arm,"
yeah.
and one of the companies claims they can pour 10-foot high walls in a single pass, and within 2 days they can have the exterior interior done, and
Huh.
then day number 3 they're bringing in the composite roof to put on top.
That's impressive. Obviously, there's gonna be a place for that. There's gonna be a market for that. There could be a market for that probably in every city across America. But then there's also gonna be those clients that want something different. They want a custom home. They want, luxurious finishes and aesthetics. So I'm interested to see what the future holds. It's hard to say exactly what that's going to be, but 3D printed homes are probably going to be a part of it. I mean, they already are. And so it's just a matter of how much of the market do they control. And if we need to get involved in it, I think tiny homes are another must just because of the reality of what the cost to own a home is today.
Well, that the speed to build, you don't have to have an abundance of labor. and they're all almost like the Lego idea or going to IKEA to buy a home. You just open it up and put them together, right? So I would have to think that that's going to take the cost down dramatically, which brings us back to a question that we were talking about earlier, like why are homes so much more expensive in one state versus the other? In Arizona, do you have to deal with a lot of red tape? Do you find that just being able to put a shovel into the ground
Yeah.
is half the expense?
And it seems to be, I don't want to I don't want to implicate myself. My building inspector is going to be watching this, but unfortunately everybody has to cover themselves more and more, protect themselves from litigation, the possibility of getting sued over, accepting something on a set of plans and then it being built and not working, so I see everybody is outsourcing plan review. They're afraid to have their inspector actually say, yeah, this is approved. So it's third party inspections. It's more and more every year. There's more people involved, there's more inspections involved. And just getting approved to begin with, it seems like they are just trying to find things to redline to justify the time it took, so and the expense. But there's definitely a lot of red tape, that's for sure, on all ends.
One of the builders I interviewed started off in Washington, D.C. He was pouring concrete. That was his job. He got interested in doing spec building. So he bought, I think it's an old gas station or liquor store. I can't remember either way. So he starts the renovation to convert it into a house. And halfway through, a bunch of guys with suitcases show up and throw a lot of money at him and tell him to go away, like even before it's done, right? And so wash, rinse, repeat. He finds another building, and this is going to be, I think, a 7-story condo building. So he starts working
Mhm.
at that, and same thing. Like he must have this magic, godmother that's following him around. More guys show up with bigger briefcases of money, and he says, "Okay, I'm done in Washington. I've always wanted to go to California." And so off he goes, go West Young Men, and starts off to be a builder there. And he said the first hard hit of reality was what it took to be able to get through this process of getting plans approved. And he said something even like getting water permits, it wasn't unrealistic to expect that you're going to be paying $100,000 to get a water permit, and it
Yeah.
could take a year or more to get that. And I'm thinking, well,
Yeah.
how can you possibly be in business when every time you're submitting a plan, it's like throwing the dice and you hope
Yeah.
it's going to get approved?
And, especially with all the fires they've had recently, that was one of the big conversations I heard is how long it's going to take to rebuild and permit. I think that was even one of the things they mentioned on the news, the mayor or the governor, I can't remember, but they were talking about how they're going to allow for expedited permitting, to try to get this rebuild happening. But we've heard that forever here in Arizona, that, California is the most difficult state to get building permits, to go through review, get your license and so forth. But from what I understand, this area, Arizona, and this area of Arizona in particular, is not too far behind, just mainly because of, I think, Sedona and the precedent they've set of fitting the mold and making sure they, do justice for the surrounding homes. It's almost like one large HOA with ridiculous requirements. So they made McDonald's have teal arches, the only place in the world where McDonald's had to change their logo in order to be approved. So,
To teal arches.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, that
Yeah,
that sounds like a topic for another interview.
right.
Uh, yeah. Let's dial back to when was it that you had that epiphany that this is going to be the vocation now, and that working with your dad is now developing into a partnership?
It wasn't long after I gave up baseball. I think I was 26 years old. I was in my off season of playing baseball, working through the winter into the winter, getting ready to go to Australia to play baseball. So it was It was already the writing was on the wall that baseball wasn't gonna last much longer, maybe a few years. It was before banana ball was around, so I didn't have that opportunity, but so I knew something was gonna be happening. I was gonna either need to go find a real job at some point, and I was working for my dad, still in a labor position. As I began doing that, I met my wife and decided to propose to her, and at the same time, the recession was still going on. We were doing a lot of remodels, and I just enjoyed doing it. I was waking up and going to work and was on a lot of different projects in Sedona, which was a beautiful place to be, and also presented us an opportunity within the company to be a superintendent and an estimator, which I think I caught on pretty quick. So it was fun. I enjoyed making profitable estimates and giving our clients a good deal. It was rewarding work to do.
I want to focus on the what's going on in your head and your dad. Like, what's that conversation that you're having about you're coming on now to learn the trade, right? So you have to know every aspect of what it is that your dad does. And that conversation is now also going to include the fact that ultimately the goal is that the company is going to be yours. You're going to be running it as your dad steps down. How did you have that conversation and what was it like?
It was a gradual realization, I think. So as I was beginning to work for him and move up the ladder, so to speak, the fortunate thing was I had a lot of great subcontractors we worked with for a long time that were a part of our team, which I was able to learn a lot from them on every aspect of building a home and learn the right way to do it, which was great, especially with the remodels. So as I got to that point and we realized that this was going to be my vocation forever, it just became kind of a natural fit. And it didn't happen overnight or in a single conversation. It was more, I think, my dad valuing having me in the office and what I brought to the table. We had another estimator superintendent at the same time, and not to toot my own horn or anything, but it was pretty clear which jobs were performing better and on schedule and profitable in the end, and didn't have 20 change orders and twice as long to complete. So it's a good question. I'm trying to think back to anything in particular. There was a couple conversations, along the way, but it kind of just seemed like the right fit. And eventually he just was giving me more. In fact, now for the past 5 years, I'm the builder seller of a subdivision here in Clarkdale, the estates at Mountain Gate, which has been a huge blessing for me and my personal family, for my dad to basically gift that to us as a separate entity. We hire Lawler Construction to build the homes, but our company, Home Based Developers, sells the homes and is the official seller for the rest of the lots in our section. So,
Okay, hold on. Let's do a timeout there. So
yeah, yeah.
you have you did a lane change without signaling here. Maybe that's common in Arizona. I don't know, you hippie types.
Possible.
So you have a company then within a company, and this company would be the sales arm, not of Lawler, but of what you're like. Explain it to me like I'm six.
So I'll try to make this quick and start from the beginning. But 12 years ago, 13 years ago, my dad was presented with an opportunity coming right out of the recession to be the builder of a subdivision in Cottonwood. We'd never been a subdivision builder. We've never experienced that. And my dad at first was like, no, that's not our style. We're custom home builders. We can't even build down to that level of home because we wouldn't know where to start. So we told the developer, the property owner, this is what we're going to need. We're going to need to upgrade these homes. We're going to need to, bring them up to at least respectable level of construction, which is probably going to increase the price. And I developed a business plan and a mission statement, the whole, thing to present to these landowners. And I think they had 3 or 4 other builders that they were interviewing, and ultimately they gave it to us. And my dad built there, Mesquite Hills, where he started Mesquite Hills Investments for probably 11 years, I think 10 years. So then that developer sold the rest of his land. That was ultimately their goal, is to become successful. We built probably 120 homes in there, 130. He got it successful enough to where a larger builder developer was interested in buying the rest of the lots, and they got out of it. So at the exact same time, we had another property owner, approach us and say, "Would you wanna build your homes on our subdivision? We would give you the premium lots, the larger lots, and you could build your larger homes in there." And at that point in time, my dad said, "I'm gonna have you and Chanel do this, my wife, and start your own company, and you become the seller there." At that point, I was, running the estimating and options. We actually were building in the Havasu with the same original developer for a few years, but we brought that RV garage into this area, and it's become very popular. Now
Yeah, your
there's
dad was telling me about that. Once you added because you have a lot of snowbirds and retirees,
Right,
that when you added an RV garage, it's like holy jumping. It'd be like the teal arches at McDonald's. It was
right,
that final thing that pulled in. I just want to rewind this for a second. It's like your dad says, "Okay, Sonny Jim," or in this case, Patrick. He's literally giving you his brand new Corvette with a full tank of gas and letting you drive it to the prom,
yeah.
is what this opportunity is. So, like, what did that make you feel, man? Like, tell me, what was that like?
It was a lot of good emotions at that time, and it still is. I mean, it's been a blessing ever since. Obviously, we have a unique niche. It's still not inexpensive homes. Everything here is fairly expensive. So, going back to your question, I was just kind of in shock to begin with that I was going to get this opportunity. It was a lot of work to do to get it ready and prepared. So the excitement of it made it easier to get all that work done and get it ready for us to start building in that new subdivision. But my dad is a very giving and loving man. I mean, especially to his family, but to everybody.
It brings up an interesting question. So, is there any, I don't want to say animosity, because I would never suspect that between you and your dad, but last time I checked, you've got DNA, you're human. Is there ever friction on the job, maybe disagreements over the way something should be done or the way you want it to be done? And I'm saying want specifically here because you're now maturing to the point where you're looking at the captain's chair, right? And this isn't something that you're just dropping your ass into to see if it feels comfortable. Like that's the vision moving forward. And I would think that as the captain, there's a direction that you want to go. And I'm not saying against what your father's built, but you want to be able to put your fingerprints on it. So
Sure.
is there ever a clash? And if so, how do you guys resolve it? Like, do you throw hammers at each other and you walk away? And do you get together because I remember your dad telling me that you don't live that far apart and he'll come thundering over in his golf cart and then you guys will basically kiss and make up over a steak and a beer.
So I'm very fortunate that he's the reason why we have a process the way we do. We truthfully want everybody that's involved in this company to feel like they have a say in the direction the company goes. And if they know a way to do something better or more efficient, or just the way they talk to a client or a building inspector, we want to hear it. We meet as a team every Tuesday morning. Me and him go to breakfast every Tuesday morning after that. And then once or twice every 3 weeks, we have a managers meeting. And so we're often on the same page. I mean, nothing just gets done out of nowhere. It's a culmination of conversations we've had over the course of months, years, or whatever it may be. And yeah, there's been small arguments, but typically we're usually on the same page. And typically there's so much going on that it's more or less dealing with what's happening and preparing for the clients we have on deck. So, when somebody comes to build a house with us, it's a 2-year relationship. I want to have some thought process further out than that. I want to get into other subdivisions, or I want to gear towards healthy homes or tiny homes, or, multifamily. Those are all aspirations, and we're setting ourselves up to where we're able to do that. But he's never been one to deny a thought or say that something I'm thinking about is not the right direction to go. He has a lot of trust in myself and our team that we have the best interest of the company in mind. So, not a whole lot of arguments.
Has there been, from your perspective, like you've had a thought like so unconventional about an approach or something that you wanted to do within the company? Has that moment, and if it is that unconventional and you actually did implement it, what would the impact be on the company?
We have implemented a lot of stuff over the past few years, especially. I would say our process is completely different than it was 5 years ago, and a lot of new technology. But, my dad's always been right there with me, if not the one introducing it to us as, an opportunity for us to become a better company. So I've had some unconventional thoughts or aspirations, but I think, you sleep on it and you realize that maybe that's not the right direction, or you have some time to realize that maybe there's a better time for this, not now. I think being extremely busy both at home and at work makes it easy for yourself to just realize the importance of staying on track and not what's the term? What's the skiing term? Get in over your skis or something.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Over your tips. Yeah. 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 I'd have to say that you and your dad strike me more as the type that would prey on it versus sleeping on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. I just want to tap on the idea again of a succession for builders that are listening right now that are in a similar situation where they have maybe a son, a son, daughter, irrelevant. They're grooming them to be able to take over the business. Are any words of wisdom that you can share? Because you're already down this path to the point where you're running, like sales divisions, if you will, inside the company. So it's already given you the grand taste of what it's going to be like to be in the captain chair. But any wisdom that you can share with builders that are in a similar situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I don't think my dad was always this way, but his relationship with God and his ability to truthfully put it in God's hands over the past 20 years, I've seen, his wisdom and knowledge and insight grow, but also his patience and, ability to forgive or let things go, not, let his emotions get the best of him ever. I mean, it seems that, one of the things we tell each other, or he's told me in the beginning, and I continue to remind everybody, is that you kind of got to go into work each day with the realization that not everything's going to go perfect. There's going to be some fires to put out, or there's going to be an issue of some sort. And if you realize that and you are, in touch with your relationship with God, then you don't let it derail you or allow you to become heated about any situation. So that kind of patience and just way of living has really helped me know that I can make a mistake. I it doesn't have to be perfect. I got to keep growing. I got to keep pursuing learning and putting things in place so that that mistake doesn't happen again. But there's never been like, I can't believe you did that, or what were you thinking? I haven't heard that come out of his mouth towards me since I've worked here, which is um, says a lot. I mean, I haven't really thought about it until you brought up the question, but that's the advice I think I would give a father who wants their kids to work for them, is to know it's going to take them a while to get going. It's going to take them a while to learn everything. You got to have that ability to let them make mistakes and learn from it on their own, or even if you have to help address it, just don't do it while you're angry, just wait until you've cooled down or calmed down to address the situation. But he's he's very slow to anger, and he almost to a fault, sometimes he probably doesn't get on certain people as much as he should, but that just comes with wisdom. There's always a reason behind it. He's got a good formula though, and I think following that patience is going to help any father, bring a son or daughter into the company and allow them to enjoy it.
Have you ever heard the story of Edison and the light bulb, the first prototype?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it just for those that are listening, it reminds me of what you were just saying about your dad, and I'll just go through it quickly. Edison has a big, I guess, not show. Investors are coming to invest in the company, and he's got the prototype ready to go. And the assistant comes running down with the stairs with the light bulb. He trips, breaks the bulb, right? Well, the future of the company is relying on something that's going to glow in the dark, right? So they're back in the lab feverishly trying to put this thing back together or create a new bulb. And then the question becomes, well, who is the person Edison is going to entrust to carry that bulb? And lo and behold, it's the same guy, because he knows that guy's not going to make the same mistake twice,
Yeah.
right? And I kind of think as you're explaining your dad's philosophy and his love for you, and I guess that whole encompassing feeling, he's trusting you enough that he realizes, the kid's going to fall down, he's going to scrape his knees, but you have to allow him to do that. And
Yeah.
it's very similar to how you treat senior citizens. We have an inkling that we want to jump in and do things
Right.
for them. And that is the worst thing you can do, because now you're disempowering them. You're taking away their independence to be able to do things on their own. And part of that is the mistakes that you make, that you get to stand up, dust yourself off, and go, okay, I'm not going to do that again.
Absolutely. I think, us growing up in a sports family too has helped him come to that understanding more quickly, and me have that mindset of, I'm going to be able to learn from my mistakes and not dwell on it. That's helped as well. I think having that team mentality that sports has given us and having that relationship with God has really put together a good recipe for running a company and how to treat your team members, and utilize them in the best way. I think one of the best things my dad has learned is surrounding yourself with smart people is the best way to be successful. There's a lot of people out there that can't delegate or trust other people to do the work they want them to do, but then you can only do yourself.
Yeah, it's critical, taking the ego out of the equation and being humble enough to realize you don't know all the answers, but the important thing is to know the people that do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got one more. Well, I say one more. That's just a segue for 10 more questions, Patrick. But what is it that keeps you up at night? Like the amount of responsibilities that you have now: family, baseball, work, future. Like, is there anything that you just every once in a while it's like, holy jumping, I'm ready to pack it all in and play baseball in the Bahamas?
Yeah, the position we're in is not a position for the squeamish, because there's always just, pleasing and serving your clients, conversations to have with trades or, whatever it may be, something that went wrong on a job, or, you're not going to meet a deadline for something. They can get to you and you can let them wear on you. So, I've learned how to try to not bring my work home, but it's nearly impossible. There's something I'm always thinking about. Often it's about how to improve a part of our process, or, maybe a conversation I need to have with somebody tomorrow, something I forgot to put in my schedule. So it's just all the little stuff. There's so much that comes with being a dad and a husband and a business owner, that you're always going to have something you can be thinking about or that's going to keep you up. So it's something you got to work on.
I know for your dad, his support network would be his faith, Cindy, his wife, your mother, family. Do you have that same relationship? Is your wife your business partner? Are you doing this together? Or do you keep those I can't even say the word, compartmentalized, that they're two separate jars altogether?
I think there's a little bit of both. We discuss a lot of what's going on in work, but only to a certain degree. There's so much going on that if I started to bring it up, it would take us all night each night, So I keep her in tune with the highlights, not necessarily the low lights. I don't want to bring anybody down when something's not going the way I want. I definitely celebrate with my family and let them know of cool things that are going on or the good things that are happening or the future that's ahead of us. Being a dad is helping them see the goals and aspirations and things like that come into fruition, due to hard work, which helps them have that same mentality of setting goals and being excited about the things that are ahead of you. So I'm fortunate my kids are very bright and good students and good athletes. So not everybody is as fortunate as that. And I try not to take it for granted. But when I'm home, we talk a lot about sports, the kids' schedules, things we got to do coming up. So work is part of the conversation, but not as much.
Is there anything you do for Patrick? Because again, going back to what we just talked about here, the stress, family, all these things that you're trying to juggle. Is there anything Patrick just does for himself? Like I'm just unplugging. I don't mean to, you go to the spa, get your nails done or anything like that, but it's specifically, this is Patrick time. And if I don't do this, I'm not going to be the husband, the father, the builder, the son that I could be.
Yeah, so I have a few things. I would say the most consistent thing I do for myself is almost every day. And so because it's every day, I've got it scheduled in my schedule that I go to the gym in the middle of the day. So if I go too early, it's not pointless, but it's busy and I don't get as good of a workout in. But if I found that if I go in the middle of the day, it kind of rejuvenates me for that afternoon. If I sit here in the office all day, I can't look at a screen anymore. I can't think anymore. So I go right in the middle of my day, right before lunch, usually call in lunch from the gym, grab it, go back to the office. And that kind of gives me that midday fire just to get after it in the afternoon. So, and then, from time to time, I like to get out in the woods, maybe, go to the river or go up into the pines. Fortunate to have a lot of beautiful places to visit in Arizona, especially where we live. We have, Phoenix an hour south and Flagstaff an hour north, which are two completely different climates. And it makes it easy to get away for a minute and find some place beautiful to spend some time, maybe a weekend. So we do that a little bit.
Good on you, man. I think we've covered a lot of ground here, young man. What do you think?
Yeah, it's been good.
Anything I haven't touched on that you'd like to address?
We could go on and on all day about, what I think about, the future of the industry or what our future is, but I think we covered a lot of good stuff.
It's interesting. When I spoke to your dad and to you, you guys get this glitter in your eye when you talk about what you do, the whole aspect of building. And I take it back to somebody, imagine this, you're in your car, son is beside you, and you're driving by this big high rise and hey, Sonny Jim, your dad used to work there on the 15th floor. Well, you can't see the cubicle that I was in, but it's there right? Versus you're going down a neighborhood and you see other children playing, somebody's out cutting the grass, people are walking down the street, and you look over to your son and say, we built that.
Yeah.
That's got to warm your heart, that the impact that you have, not only on your family, but other families and families of families. You touch so many people. And I just hope you don't strike me as the kind of guy that would ever take that for granted. But man, what a gift that must be, knowing that you've had such a positive influence on so many people.
That is a good point. I love looking at the projects that we have completed. But another thing that I think of often is, all the employees and their families that are impacted by the work that we are so blessed to do. I tried to, crunch the numbers. It's hard to do so, but I would imagine there's got to be 500 people on each house, families of the laborer or the painter, the, drywall or stucco guys and their kids. And just knowing that we're supplying consistent work that they can rely on a paycheck. That's something that I think we try to value as much as possible and really try to value everybody that's involved, which I think helps them take ownership out on our jobs when they're there. They knew what my dad's expectations were. And I think that's carried down into just the name of our company now. And they expect that we're going to expect quality work and good workmanship in all aspects of that house. And it shows when we're done with it. And you hear it from the neighbors and the people around saying, yeah, I saw your job. It was so clean. And you guys just have a different way of going about building your homes, which is always awesome to hear. So,
Patrick, I can't think of a better way to end this conversation. And I look forward to the next one. Pass along my hellos to your dad.
I will.
And have to get this gnarly ass out there for a beer and a steak. So we'll have dinner at your dad's, and then we'll get into the golf cart and end up at your place for dessert.
That's right. No, we got to end up at his. He's got the pool, so.
Okay. There you go. Thanks again, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it, and we'll be talking to you soon, hopefully.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming days. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.